Kris will tell you a little bit more about what this program is and what we're trying to accomplish today. Kris?
David, thank you. And good morning to everybody. I know we've got 56 folks so far. We're headed towards 92 perhaps. And apologies if technology isn't perfect, but we're doing our best, and we think we'll do pretty well today. First of all, thanks for being a part of it. I think we're on day 22 of shelter in place. If you're like me, you've been affectionately sheltered in place with your loved ones or trapped with your loved ones for 5 or 6 weeks or maybe longer. But very excited to have you guys here, and wanted to tell you a little bit about the program and what we have in store for you today. I'm Kris Kellogg. I'm our Chief Development Officer at the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, and we've partnered with a group called Faster Glass. You've heard from Dan and David and Charlotte. You're going to hear more from them today. Fantastic partner for our organization, and you're going to understand more about that in a little while. The experience you're going to get, I think, today on this virtual workshop, really interactive and really offers everybody the opportunity to participate. So we'll get into some of the details. Why are you here? What's the Alliance trying to do today? So many of you may have been a part of chapters in the past. There were a platform that previously the Chamber and now the Alliance have had for 2 decades or longer to serve small and medium-sized businesses. And it's really the evolution of that. And as we move forward, we're calling this program today Crisis to Continuity. And we'll talk about why that title. But essentially what we're trying to do is create a new platform to serve small and mid-sized businesses. And when I say that, I mean those companies with less than 100 employees, not larger organizations. And that's throughout our region. And we've had several focus groups over the last several months, and many pilots or testimonials that we've worked through. But today is really our launch of a scaled pilot with a much larger group. And many of you may be investors in the organization through the Alliance. Many of you aren't. That's great. Very diverse group of folks. And what we're really trying to get to is, how do we create a program that connects resources that you might not normally have available to you in the small business world in a way that can make you more successful? And that could be across a variety of topics and challenges in your business. And our goal is to try to connect you in a way where we can connect, offer learning opportunities, and also help you grow your business. Not just during a time of crisis, but we're all going to come out of this thing. And what are we going to look like on the other side? So this program that we're entitling Solvable is a way for us to engage small and mid-sized businesses and help you interact with what we're calling solutions providers. Those are the folks on your screen marked as SPs. Those are experts in a particular area. Today it's crisis management. Tomorrow it could be a variety of other things. And the goal is to be able to provide you those resources you might not normally have access to in your business, but that can help you overcome some of your challenges and grow and be a part of the Alliance along the way. So that's kind of the gist of it. Again, today is about crisis and continuity. It'll be about other topics as we move forward. I do want to give a quick shout out to all of our solutions providers and our speaker, Vanessa Mathews. We've got a great program in front of you, and we'll talk more as we get into it, but we're also going to keep it open at the end for some networking and give you the opportunity to interact a little bit. Most importantly, thanking you for being here. Thanks for your feedback. It's going to be really important to how we craft this program going forward. And without further ado, Dan, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you for that, Kris. David? Let's go through our tech check, everyone, just really quickly. For those who are familiarizing yourself with the platform that we are going to be using today, we're going to be using Zoom. I think everybody is intimately familiar with Zoom now. But just really quickly, for those who maybe haven't been using it that much, you have a couple functionalities that are really important. First of all, when you get into your breakout rooms, your mute and unmute button. So if you got some background noise going on, you can Alt-A or hit mute down at the bottom. If you have a low bandwidth connection for some reason, a lot of times stopping your video will help. As Felix called it earlier, is country internet. So if you have country internet, by all means, stop your video and focus on the audio. We are going to be using another tool, which we'll demonstrate here in a little bit, called Mural, to capture all of these thoughts. So afterwards, we can gather all the thoughts together and push them out to everybody who is on the call. So if you're calling in from a phone, or you're working on an iPad, or maybe you're just one of our self-described tech-challenged individuals, we will have an alliance support person in the room who will work with Mural, because we want you all, participants and solution partners, to be able to focus on the conversation and not necessarily on the technology. Two other components. First of all, you have your participants, so you can see everybody else who's on the call. But then also we have our chat functionality. And chat functionality is a really powerful tool in the virtual space. So if everybody could just click on their chat, give me a little thumbs up, give me a little bit of a hello, and in your participants, you also have the ability to raise your hand if you have questions. So that'd be good. Now everybody's just piling in. That is fantastic. Tim, thank you. Christian, thank you. Good morning. Say something to the crowd. You've got some buttons in the participants where you can ask questions. You can tell us to go faster, go slower. If you like what you heard, say yes. So and some folks are getting the emojis with the thumbs up on your videos, and I can see those as well. David's going to be your moderator. Myself and Charlotte are going to be your air traffic control. I am going to, David, if you could just put the previous slide up, which will have my phone number on there. That's my direct line right here. So if for some reason you're having some serious technical difficulties and we want to be able to address those offline, please feel free to shoot me a text or go ahead and give me a call, and we will be able to help you. So I'll put my number directly in chat. I'll also put my email directly in chat, and Charlotte will put hers in there as well. Feel free to use either one of those numbers if you're having some serious technical difficulties. And with that being said, we'll come back to you all in just a little bit to describe how we will be using Mural in the breakout rooms. David, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. So very quickly, here's what we are trying to accomplish during our session today, during our time together today. We want to provide you with some useful information from a subject matter expert who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. We want to also provide a forum for you to share ideas among other small and mid-sized business owners. And then lastly, we want to gather feedback from you on this concept. Again, as Kris and Dan both mentioned, this is a pilot. This is the second pilot we've run of this program, but this is the first one we've done at this sort of scale and doing it virtually. So your feedback, your candid feedback, both at the end of the session and a follow-up survey that will go a little bit more in depth, will be invaluable for us going forward. But with that said, how will work? So we're going to have about 15 minutes with Vanessa, hear from our solution partner. And then we're going to break into small teams using Zoom's virtual breakout room capability. And in those small groups, along with a solution partner and a tech guru from the Alliance, we're going to discuss and capture how might you apply what you've heard from Vanessa. What else have you done in this space about moving from crisis to continuity? What have you already done in your business that you can share with your fellow participants? And then what questions do you have for Vanessa and the other solution partners that we might either have time to answer at the end of today, or that we can send out responses to those questions after this session? So that's what we are going to try to accomplish this morning. So with that said, it is my honor to introduce our solution partner for today, Vanessa Mathews, the founder and president of Asfalis Advisors. Asfalis focuses on risk management, crisis management, and business continuity. So as you might imagine, her phone is ringing off the hook these days. So we are very happy that she's carved out some time with us. So without any other delay, Vanessa, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you take it away.
Awesome. Good morning. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So as David mentioned, we're here to talk about from crisis to continuity, and I'm excited to share a few things with you. We've had a chance to work with a number of organizations, from small businesses to medium businesses and large enterprises, and I'm hoping to take the collective of what we've learned Asfalis Advisors is a business resilience company. And so what that means is we partner with forward-thinking organizations to help you do three things: identify risks, to plan for contingencies, and to solve for crises that impact your operation. Prior to me running my own practice, I experienced a tornado with wind speeds exceeding 135 miles per hour. It picked up my vehicle and totaled it while I was inside of it. And there were cars, dumpsters, and billboards flying towards my head. And for the first time in my life, I realized on that day, you are not in control. And many of you probably feel like that now. I'm not in control of how many cases of COVID-19. I'm not in control of when the quarantine measures will be lifted, and I'm not in control of how this will impact the economy. So I share that with you to help you understand that I get you, and I understand what it's like to be in a crisis when you don't know how to navigate your way out of it. We've been working with clients since January on the preparation for and the response to COVID-19. Some of our clients had cases of COVID-19 at their facilities. Some of them operated in different states and different counties across the United States. And so there were different requirements for every part of the country. And some of them were well prepared and some were not. And so I'm hoping to take these collective experiences and share them with you today. Today, we're going to talk about two things: evaluating crisis leadership principles and understanding a business continuity framework to normalization. So this is probably the most important thing that we're going to talk about today, and that is the notion of crisis leadership. And the very first thing that this starts with is trust. So one of our solution partners is actually on the call, Ricky Davis, and every time I'm in a meeting with him, he always says, we're here to build a relationship and establish trust. And those principles apply in leadership, especially in crisis leadership. At the core of everything we do, there has to be trust. We believe that crisis leaders show trust by sacrifice, being willing to give up in order to get up. The second principle of crisis leadership is communication, which is critical every day of the week, but it's even more critical in times of crisis. And we believe that communication is a two-way bridge. It's a two-way street. You have to be willing to listen and to solicit the feedback from your team. The third principle of crisis leadership is influence. And that is it really is about having the competence, the character, and the connection to lead people. What I love about crisis management is your title will give you the authority, but your title does not give you influence. And so when we're in a crisis management environment with leaders from all over the world, if you're the CFO, the CEO, or the SVP, no one cares, because it's about your ability to influence the people. And so in times of crisis, decision makers are great, but people are really looking for leaders, and leaders have influence. The fourth piece that we believe is critical for crisis leadership is hope. And that is the ability for you to be able to see what it can be, which means your current environment probably does not reflect what it can be. Your job as a crisis leader is to be able to see and to have the hope. And then in turn, you influence people, you communicate with people, and you give them the trust that they need, that we're gonna make it and we're gonna get out of it. And hey, I don't know what it looks like either, but we'll figure it out together. So when we talk about the difference of everyday leadership versus crisis leadership, what's the main difference? From my perspective, it boils down to one word: it's pressure. I'm a former athlete and I relate things to food and sports. So for me, crisis leadership is the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter on every decision. You played the whole game, you're tied neck and neck, you're down to 2 minutes. Everything you do from that point forward will determine the outcome of that game. So when we talk about communication, what does that look like? And why does this tie into coffee? So my husband's a chef, so we've been eating really good on this COVID-19. And I've always tried to think about, well, how do we tie things into food? Because everybody eats. So from a coffee making perspective, there's three major components: water, the filter, and the coffee beans. The coffee beans are the source of the flavor. The water helps to distribute that flavor. And the filter is what purifies everything so that it works. The filter is there to capture the grit and the grain from your coffee so that it maintains its quality. That is your role as a crisis leader. You're getting two things coming at you every single day. You're getting education and you're getting information. Education is what you're hearing from the CDC and the World Health. Those are the leaders from a public health perspective. You're getting your information from the politicians, You're getting your information from social media. You're getting your information from your scared family and friends who keep texting you crazy things that the world is ending and we're going to have an apocalypse. Your job is to filter that communication, capture the grit, capture the things that we don't need, and effectively communicate to your internal and your external stakeholders. What this does for you as a leader is it helps you to streamline the information. It helps you to remove the biases. It helps you to keep a focus on your people because that's what matters. And more importantly, it sets you up as a crisis leader to be able to delegate to your team and empower them to act. This type of crisis is not the crisis where you have to have 17 levels of authority. You need to empower your team to act. That is the biggest takeaway that I would like for you to take away from today's conversation. So what I decided to do was to share with you a framework that we've been working on in partnership through this COVID-19, because the number one question we get is, what is a timeline? So I first want to level set. This is a framework that was designed and developed by Dr. David Linstead. He's the author of the Adaptive Business Continuity book. I serve as an advisory member to the Adaptive Business Continuity Board. And so this is a 3-phase approach specific to COVID-19. And the reason why is there is very little research on a prolonged business continuity event and what organizations actually do in this century. So what I mean by that is business continuity is all about, if you don't have your people, your technology, or your assets, the things that you walk into every day to do business, how do you continue to operate the organization, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, 2 weeks, or a month? Never in history that we have seen from data have we seen organizations go through a business continuity prolonged event. You can pull from examples from different things that have happened, like past wars, hurricane events, but traditionally that we're seeing right now, it has not existed yet. And so this is a framework that you can use and can apply to have some conversations and to also help you and your business. And it's divided into what we have called the 3 phases of normalization. I believe that normalization is what you create. So I'll share this with you at a very high level, and I'll give you some details in the summary. So the first phase is where we are now, is where we are now. We're quarantining, we're sheltering in place, we're compliant, and we're cooperating until the quarantine lifts. And again, we don't know when that is. This phase can also come back similar to what it's doing in Japan and China if there are more cases. The phase 2 is we're out of the quarantine, but it's not normal. So we still are confused. Well, can I go to the mall? Can I not go to the mall? Can I go to a sports game? Can I not go to a sports game? So there will be new cultural norms that we will have to adapt to. And we don't know what that is yet. And then phase 3 is about the competition and the adaptation that you're going to see. And so why I share this with you is because the strategies that you use in each phase are going to be different. And so you need to spend your time now investing in phase 2 and in phase 3. We believe crisis management is 80% communication, 20% strategy. You have to have a strategy to navigate in an environment when you're facing a threat that you cannot physically see. And number 2, when you are in an environment where your only constant is change. So I'll talk you through the summary table really quickly. So phase 1 is all about this narrative. And this narrative is an American perspective. So I want to level set with that. We're all victims. We're all in this together. It's impacting everybody. We're all struggling, right? That's what many people have been discussing and that you actually see. The key question here is how can we help? What can we do to help? Which is great. We care about people, and that should be the focus. How, do you care about your organization and your people and your clients and your community? The exit criteria here is when the quarantine lifts. Well, what does that look like? And what's the duration? And the reality is any date you hear, no one really knows. Because again, the virus dictates the timeline, as have been told by the public health officials. So what we know is that crisis breeds innovation and creativity. And the principles of crisis leadership are going to be absolutely critical to get you through phase 2 and phase 3. So the alternative, if you don't apply the principles of crisis leadership, is you won't have people to carry you through the next 20 to 40 weeks. I want to be very, very clear about that. People matter, and that's the first priority. Phase 2 is where we'll be in this shock, fear, anxiety phase. And it's this phase of, again, can I go to the mall? Can I go to the sports game? Can I go to my friend's house? What can I do and what can't I do? And the challenge is that you should expect conflict in these phases, because your local government officials will say one thing, the White House will say another thing, and then the private industry will do something different. And so you have to be thinking about how different people will adapt in those environments. So the narrative here is, I'm a castaway. You've forgotten about me. I've lost my family. I've lost my friends. I've lost my time. I've lost my job. What are you going to do for me, government or company? So the exit criteria here that we're talking about is, well, when there is a treatment or a protocol for what to do when you get sick. Because again, we don't expect for a cure to be here by next month, right? So this is not a cure, it's kind of a workaround. So what's the protocols for when people get sick so we can, again, learn how to navigate in this new normal? So the key mission here in phase 2 is leadership. Why? Because there's so much uncertainty and everybody is not a leader. So you have to have leaders to navigate you through this crisis, which is why the principles of crisis leadership are so critical. So the New York Times called out five principles of what they believe through other research that's needed from an exit criteria perspective. We don't have time to dive into that today, but I encourage you to research that. I also encourage you to go back to a New York Times article that's titled "The Wuhan Province 10 Weeks Later." And it talks about what the Wuhan province is experiencing in the phase 2, because they were here. They had the most amount of people die. They've seen their friends and families pass away. And now they're in this weird phase of, well, what can I do? What can't I do? They still have to get permission to leave their province. And again, those are things that we're not accustomed to, especially as Americans. So phase 3 is when we expect to see competition and adaptation. What can happen here is that we could be competing for limited resources. This is when foreign investors can come in and take over local markets. Big regentrification efforts and kicking out small businesses and bringing in big businesses. You can also look at data from Hurricane Katrina, Christchurch earthquakes from California that can show you these examples and how these things have happened in past disasters. So the narrative here that people may have is this defendant mindset. Everyone has wronged me. This is just bad. And so what we're thinking about here is what can start to come up is a lot of litigation. And so we're encouraging people to make sure that you have a great relationship with your lawyer, and more importantly, one that knows how to litigate. The other side of this are businesses who are framing. They're strategizing, they're preparing to navigate this third phase, and they're setting themselves up for success. And this is where we will have to adapt. And so the key mission in phase 3 will be, how do we capitalize on this market so that we can get into what this new cultural normalization will actually be. So you have to do everything from phase 1 and phase 2 in order to be prepared in phase 3. The last piece that I will share with you today is what's next. So that's the other question I get a lot. So first, McKinsey has done an awesome job in thought leadership, and I'm not affiliated with them, but they've been amazing. So I encourage you, if you're not familiar with the McKinsey reports, read the data and read what they're sharing with you, because they've been spot on in a number of things. Skunkworks is a concept that was created back in 1943 by Lockheed Martin when the U.S. Defense Department requested that they make the first fighter jet. And they put a team of people together that developed, designed, tested, and delivered a fighter jet in 143 days. And since then, companies like Amazon, Nike, et cetera, have adopted this mindset where you put your team of innovators in a room to have them strategically think through what the next steps are. The concept here is for you to get a team together that is thinking in terms of weeks, quarters, year 1 and year 2. And thinking about, well, what if everybody has to stay at home with their kids until 2021? What if Amazon goes out of business? What if Walmart goes out of business? What are the trigger points from a business resilience perspective if you think about your people, your processes, your infrastructure, and your technology? What are those trigger points that can disrupt me? And so the goal here is for you to develop a quiet side team that can help navigate this. Pre-COVID-19, I would have told you have a crisis management team with a subset of a crisis communications team and a business continuity team to think about the continuity of the operation. We're pivoting too. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to set aside a quiet, small team that has the following characteristics. It's small, they have massive goals, they're extremely isolated, so they're not burdened by those that may be biased, who may not believe in the vision and where you are going. They need to report to the top, and they need to build incredibly fast with extreme autonomy. The last thing that I'll share with you is either you can do it or your competitor can do it for you. So I encourage you to think ahead and think about what's next for your business. With that, I will turn it back over to Dan